Okay, welcome to another episode of Hanging Out with Popsy Guy. And hopefully you clicked on this link because you saw the title that said the 3 things you must do before you retire. Well, I'm going to disappoint you because it's not going to be the same old 3 things that you must do before you retire, such as rebalance your portfolio, make sure that you have enough money stashed aside, all of that stuff that you see on YouTube all the time. You don't need that. What you need is somebody to tell you 3 things that you haven't even thought of just yet. Stick around for number 3 because I'm 100% sure that most of you have not even given this any thought. And this is born out of my own experience. So I'm not going to throw a lot of fancy numbers at you and statistics. I will share with you some numbers that I've looked at. But let's get right into it. So number 1, the obvious one, and it's really the only financial advice, is get out of debt. 65% of seniors over the age of 65 think that their debt problem is serious. And the only other statistic I'll share with you that kind of blew my mind is over the 30-year period of 1992 to 2022, there's been an explosion of over 450% of people over the age of 65 that are in debt. So do whatever you can to get out of debt. Now, I'm not talking about pay off your mortgage, especially if you've got an attractive interest rate. But the 2 things that will really mess you up is carrying credit card debt or some other unsecured debt where the rates are not fixed, but they're variable. And it's my sense that these rates are not going to come down anytime soon. And that is a crying shame for those of us in our 60s to be paying off credit cards at 25% interest. That is legal loan sharking. There's no way credit card companies and banks should be getting away with that. So tip number 1, before you retire, get a handle on your debt. Pay off your debt as soon as you can. I would recommend that if you need to forego putting money aside in your 401k right now and redirecting that to outstanding debt, I think from an arbitrage standpoint, and arbitrage is just a fancy word for the difference. Paying off debt in the high 20s versus hoping for a return in your 401k of 8 to 10% is a no-brainer, especially with what's happening in the markets right now. Markets are not looking good. Not suggesting you take money out of your plan to pay off debt. That's completely up to you. But do whatever you can do to get out of debt. Then you'll have peace of mind when you are in your area, in the time of your life when you're not receiving a regular paycheck anymore. Does that make sense? I know it's like, oh yeah, Popsy Guy, I get it. Pay off your debt, yada, yada, yada. But I'm serious. Because once you make the decision to stop working and you don't have that consistent paycheck being deposited into your account every 2 weeks, you're relying on Social Security if you're applying for it, and whatever savings that you've been able to stash away in your retirement plan or what have you. And that's not going to last forever. And you don't want that money dedicated to the loan sharks at the banks. Okay, so let's get that straight. Pay off debt. Number 2, and this is not financial at all, and it's probably not something a lot of people talk about, but is this. Do whatever you can to avoid getting diabetes. Yeah, that's what I said. Do whatever you can right now in your metabolic health to avoid becoming a diabetic. Even if you're pre-diabetic, that can be reversed. And this comes from experience, and I think you probably know people like this as well, who have extraordinary health complications because of diabetes. The quality of life starts to go downhill as we age. There's a whole myriad of problems when our blood sugar is completely out of whack. And the medical profession today just wants to put you on some type of medication. That's not going to solve it. That's just going to slow it down. If you are not diabetic or you're pre-diabetic and you're in your 60s, right now is the best time to learn how to manage your metabolic health. And that's just a fancy term for how to make sure that you don't become, or you hopefully can reverse, what's called insulin resistance. I'm going to link, as I did in a previous video, to a couple of doctors that I follow on YouTube that have really, really good, sound research on insulin resistance and how you can manage that process. without giving up all the things that you love. You just have to be a little bit smarter. Now, does Popsy Guy do this? He tries. There are times when I'll stand in front of the refrigerator, elbow deep in a box of extra toasty Cheez-Its, trying to decide, do I want a salad or should I just skip dinner? So I'm not saying this is an easy process, but those extra, ultra processed foods that we eat, the crackers, all of that has refined sugars and flour, and it just wreaks havoc in our metabolic system. And that's how diabetes actually gets its start. So when the body cannot process on its own all of the refined carbs, the sugars, and all the overall crap that we put in our bodies, that as kids, that was the food pyramid, right? You remember the food pyramid? What a complete joke that was, right? Load up on carbohydrates. Well, refined sugars, flours, sodas, all these things are carbohydrates, and the body can only handle so much before it just quits processing the insulin it needs to fight off that high blood sugar level, and you got diabetes. So pay attention to your metabolic health. Don't become diabetic if you can help it. That's going to save you money in the long run. It's also going to give you peace of mind, knowing that you're at least trying to take care of your health. And if you're anything like me, you want to stick around long enough to see your grandkids grow up. I'm not editing that out. Oh, I hope it doesn't disgust you, but it is what it is. Third one, and then I'll wrap it up. And this is the one I said stick around for because nobody's talking about this, and there's a real good chance that you never even gave it any thought. But consider a pre-planned funeral. And again, this comes from experience with my dad. My dad did that, and it was a very reasonable expense for him. But here's my take on the whole thing. I think I can share an experience with you. So both my parents died, I don't want to say suddenly, but it was more like without warning. My mom, when she was 67, I'll tell you this story real quick. It's kind of heartbreaking, to be honest with you. So it's back in 2000. I was sitting for the Certified Financial Planner exam in downtown Boston. It was a 2-day, 10-hour exam. And my wife and I made plans to celebrate that Saturday night being done taking the test. Now, this is back in the day. You didn't get your results on the computer instantly. You had to have them mailed to you, and it was another 3-month process. But the point is that we were celebrating. We were in a hotel in Boston. This is before cell phones. This is the year 2000, right? A lot of people didn't have cell phones back then. My hotel phone rings, and usually that's not a good sign because not a lot of people knew we were there. The kids were very young. I think they were only 5 and 6, 6 and 7 at the time. So we had my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law staying with the kids. So our hearts just stopped and thought, they're the only ones that know we're here. So I answer the phone, and it happens to be my mother's husband. And he called me up and he said, David, your mother just died on the couch. I don't know what to do. Now, can you imagine me standing there with a glass of champagne in my hand, hearing this news? It was like an out-of-body experience. My mother just died, and her husband is standing over the body on the couch calling me because he doesn't know what to do. Well, luckily, and it was God's blessing on me, that I happened to be friends with the best funeral home in the town that we lived in, and I had the funeral director's personal number, and I didn't know what to do. So on a Saturday night around 10 o'clock, I called that number, and they answered. And they said, Dave, don't you worry about it. I'll take care of everything. Give me the details. And I did. I told them as much as I had, and they took it from there. But not everybody is lucky enough to have that experience. But my dad, when he passed away, he had already had it so that as soon as he was deceased, a firm that he had hired very reasonably would step into action. They would take care of the body. In both cases, my parents wanted to be cremated, so that was taken care of. But I tell you that story because the first story was hard. The second story was hard, but it was easy. When I say easy, it was easy on me because my dad had already done it. All I had to do was coordinate it, set up the service, and this was during COVID, so there was only like 7 people there. But my point is this: don't leave it to the funeral home, don't leave it to your family during that time, because it's a very, very emotional time. And I love funeral home directors because they're great business owners, they're very compassionate, but they need to make a living. So when they see you come in, yes, they're going to be compassionate. Yes, they're going to understand what's going on. This is what they do for a living, but they also understand that, hey, maybe your mom and dad would have liked this style casket versus that style. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying everybody's going to upsell you in your worst emotional state, but it can happen, and you may just say, whatever, just do whatever and send me the bill. Then you get the bill, and you're set to have a pre-planned funeral just for yourself. So the third one is for you to take the time to investigate having your services already pre-planned so that your family is not responsible for it. They don't have to make decisions in a very emotional time period, and you're going to save money. So I think those are the three things that I would suggest that you would think about before you decide to retire, because these are things that a lot of people are not talking about, and I want to talk to you about them because I know they're real. I've lived through them. I just want to give you a heads up that you need to take care of yourself. Nobody else is going to do it for you. Anyway, thank you very much. Hey, listen, I want to say thank you to everybody who has basically put Popsy Guy on the map. And I'm telling you right now, that's not like, wow, he's famous. Basically, you've made my YouTube journey going into the end of my third month exciting. Exciting because you've watched the videos, you've commented, you've talked to each other in the community, which is something I've said this and I'll say it again, that I absolutely love. I love the fact that you all are talking to each other, you're coming up with ideas, you're giving each other encouragement, and that's really what this channel is all about. So anyway, continue to subscribe if you haven't already, support the channel with a like or a comment, share the video if you found any value in it at all. But I really enjoy doing this, and I hope you found that those 3 pointers would help bring a little bit more peace into your life when you decide to retire. Well, thanks again for hanging out with Popsy Guy, and we'll see you on the next one.